All right, I'm back again. Had some technical issues there. What I wanted to demo is, and what I tried doing is using Claude with a curl MCP Docker running in my home lab to be able to deploy production like or an HA configuration of two F5s with a single prompt. So I'm just going to ask Claude to go ahead and make those changes towards my F5. And I want to see if it could do it itself. So let me just share my screen here. All right, here I have in here. I've already used curl just to be able to connect to my F5 BIGIP. So I have two F5s running in here with nothing configured on them, no self IPs, no VLANs. Well, I do have some VLANs. Let me delete that so we can recreate that again on here. So a base configuration with nothing on it. And what I'm going to do is ask Claude to configure high availability on these. So first things I'm like, can you curl and get the version running on these two F5 big IPs, HTTPS 172.16.10.10 and HTTPS 172.16.10.11. All right, so now it's going to run the curl command using MCP Docker, and it's going to go ahead and retrieve the information for me. So, all right, cool. Device 1, that's what it's running. Device 2, that's what it's running itself. Pretty straightforward. So, all right, let's build it. So I want to use the curl function again to set up HA for these F5 big IPs. I want my HTTPS 172.16.10.10 to be named bigip1.example.com and HTTPS 172.16.10.11 to be named bigip2.example.com. I want to configure 3 VLANs for each network interface. We will create an external, internal, and an HA VLAN for each. Please use the following subnets. For external, I want to use 172.16.20.0/24. For internal, I want to use 172.16.30.0.24. And for HA, I want to use 192.168.100.0/30. Also, I want to set up DNS at 8.8.8.8 and 1.1.1.1. And I want to configure an NTP server using a public NTP, like let's add 2 NTP servers, 1 and 2. What else? And also we want to configure a default route of 20.1. And for each self IP, I want .5 to be the primary, .6 to be on the secondary device, and I want 10 to be the floating IP address. All right, let's see what this can do. All right, cool. So we're happy to set up HA, which is great. Setting up device names, configure VLAN, self IPs, DNS, default route, config sync. Let's get started. All right, so it's already started. It's created the VLANs. It's created the VLANs on both devices, internal, external. It's now creating the HA VLAN on the secondary device. Awesome. Now we're going to create the self IP addresses. So if we expand this, we can see that it's literally just issuing a curl command on here. All right, internal self IP addresses are configured. If we log into the F5 while this is running and take a look at self IP addresses, we see they are starting to get built. Perfect. Self IP addresses. Oh, they're getting built here. Refresh this. They're slowly getting built. So now it's setting up the big IP2. It's creating the floating IP addresses for the devices, creating DNS. DNS and NTP super important when deploying an F5 big IP. Make this a little bit bigger. It's configuring NTP because we require NTP sync. It's going to configure our default route that we asked for. Excellent. Configures it on both devices, but then it's got to sync it after, but that's okay. Now it's going to set up the trust. So I really want to see if this actually works and it configures the trust between the two big IPs itself. So it's got some error with the first one or some issues. So it's trying again with the correct format. Let's check the root cause. We modified the first name on the big IP. Okay, that's great. Let's try to address this by creating the device group first. All right, let's auto sync. That's fine. Now let's add the device to this group. Let's try to add the big IP to the domain trust first. All right, why not? It sees some alternative issue. So, all right, now it's configuring the config sync IP addresses. I guess it was missing, so it figured out that it needed the config sync IP addresses configured on the devices itself. Looks like it had some error. So it's recreating the device trust with a different approach or whatever that is. It's trying to synchronize them by creating the device group. So it's trying to fix itself. It's trying to figure out what it's doing. It's probably getting errors. All right, let's try another approach. First, configure the failover settings on both devices before you add them. That makes sense. So it's kind of neat. It figured out what was doing wrong with itself. It started testing things. It started adding the device to the trust without a config sync even configured. Then it finally figured out, oh, I need config sync and I need the IP addresses in there added. So let's review what it did. It set up the device host names, big IP1, big IP2. Created the VLANs. I didn't specify which interface to use. I just told it to use it. External VLAN, internal and HA VLAN. Created the self IP addresses I directed it to, .5 and .6. Created the floating IP addresses on the networking devices. Configured DNS, NTP. Set up the default route. Configured HA. Configured the sync. Set up mirroring and unicast failover. It did come up with some challenges to enable that trust relationship. So there might be something we have to do manually to force the config sync for these devices. and verify the failover. So let's take a look. All right, we're going to log into our F5s. We're here. Looks like it couldn't add the sync to them. I ran this before and it was able to do it, which is fine. So it set up all the self IP addresses. Look, it missed an IP address here. But it just didn't put the floating addresses. So why don't we do this? Hey, can you run curl against these devices and set up trust and HA sync between them? All right, let's try it. Let's see if it can do it again. So it's examining the device trust situation. Let's check the Big IP device certificates on 1 and 2. Okay, it's going to try to establish a trust. There's an error using the REST API. It's going to try a different approach. Sure. Some confusion with the device name. Sure, let's try. Keeps on trying different methods. It's not really consistent because I've had this running in a demo before and it worked very well. So it's still having challenges establishing that trust, which is fine. But what it did is, let's see what we got. We still have the trust not being set up. So let's do that for the device itself. We have the Big IP name here. And you know, it could be that it's calling this guy Big IP1 and Big IP1. So can you make sure that HTTPS 172.16.10.11 is called Big IP 2. Let's try to rename it. So since the patch does that method word renaming, we'll have to use tmsh command through the bash utility. Great, successfully did that. So let's just refresh. Okay, now can we use the curl and try to set up HA sync again? All right, it's going to try third time's the charm, I hope. All right, trying to establish the trust one more time. I think it's pretty cool just to be able to get to this point and be able to automate and orchestrate just with a couple sentences is awesome. Oh, look, perfect. That seemed to work. So the error was that the name of the device was the same name. So there are some issues with that. So by asking it to change the name to Big IP2, because I cloned the virtual Big IPs, might have had some issues, but that's perfect. All right, let's check the status sync. So they're going to execute the sync command just using curl. Perfect. Run tmsh. Let's check the sync status. Great. All right, configuration has successfully synced. So we had to give it some help, which is fine. And we were able to deploy the device in an HA mode. So now HA setup, internal, external HA VLANs are configured on the device. We have NTP set up. We have pool members could be next. We can configure pool members next. So let's take a look at our F5 device. We see that it's an active standby. Perfect, exactly what we wanted. We see the two devices in sync. If we go to self IP addresses, all our self IP addresses are here. We go to this primary device now. All the self IP addresses are there. Perfect. So now we've built a full F5. So let's kind of add some more things to it. All right, this is great. I noticed that if we take a look at external floating IP addresses, the port lockdown is set to default. I want to change that. I noticed the port lockdown on the external and internal is set to default. I want to change it to none, right? I think that's the option is allow none. Let's go. Allow none. Can you do this with the curl again? Function that I'm doing. All right, perfect. So now it's going to modify the external self IP addresses on the F5 BIGIP. Beautiful. Modify. It does it on the second one. I guess it doesn't know that HA should just sync between each other, but that's okay. All right, perfect. It's modifying. So let's verify the changes to make sure the setting looks good. All right, so it noticed that it doesn't have service allow all anymore on here. It's set to none, which is good because it did sync. So why would it have it set there? I guess it doesn't know that. So now it's going to modify. So what's it doing? It's modifying the floating IP addresses. Awesome. We don't want those. We want those set as default. We don't want any services running on those configurations itself. So perfect. It's set it up. Now, if we refresh our page, we see it's set to none. Perfect. We want our port lockdown to be set to none on our F5 devices. Another thing that we want to do, maybe let's build a VIP. Why not? Let's build a test virtual server. It's going to be on port 80 with a VIP IP address of 172.16.20.100, and it will have 5 pool members running on port 80 with the following. Actually, you know what it will have. Yeah, we'll have 5 pool members running on port 80 with the following IP addresses. Starting at, let's see if it does this, 172.30.100 to 104, right? Also include HTTP health monitor on this configuration. I spelled configuration wrong. All right, perfect. First, let's create that HTTP health monitor. All right, send a curl request to the device. Create the 5 pool members. Boom, there's the path. Create the virtual server. Let's make sure everything's connected. Verify the configuration. So here's the output that it verified. Now we're going to check the sync status, which is awesome. So it actually knows to check that it's synchronized between the two devices and verify that it exists on the primary BIGIP and that exists on the standby BIGIP2 itself. So that's awesome. And then it gives us the output. All right, great. Now we have our HTTP monitor. We have our web pools with the IP addresses, all the pool members itself. Awesome. We have our virtual server information. All right, this is great. This is great. But I want my pool to be least connection. Can you change this? Yeah, that's right. I want least connections in my pool. Make it happen. Perfect. It did it. Let's take a look just so we are sure we have our virtual server created. We have our pool created. I don't have any servers running in the backend. We have our custom health monitor that we created. We have least connections established on this device. Perfect. Are you able to write an I rule and apply it to this virtual server we created that only allows clients from 172.16.20.0 24 subnet? I don't know. Let's get creative. Let's see if it's able to do this. I haven't tested creating I rules through here, but why not? It should be able to. All right, perfect. Here's the I rule reject client. Excellent. Now let's apply that I rule to the virtual server. Verify the I rule is correctly applied. Perfect. Check the HA sync. Even better. All right, you successfully built that I rule, uploaded it, and if sets the client IP address, if the client IP address equals this subnet, then the connection will be disallowed from this device. Amazing. Then it explains the I rule. So now let's do this. All right. So can you create a GitHub repo in my GitHub account, Sevicorp, and document this F5 deployment in a README file? And can you also upload the configuration into GitHub so we can have a document on how it's configured and deployed? Let's do that. All right, perfect. So, all right, I'll create a GitHub repo. So it's going to go ahead and ask me, hey, am I allowed to initiate the create repo from my MCP Docker? So I'm going to allow this to happen. Now it's going to create the README file. Awesome. With a comprehensive documentation, you know, all that stuff that Claude's going to do about this device. Perfect. The device names, VLAN configuration, self IP address, everything is here. Everything we've asked for it to do is right here itself. Now it's asking us to upload it. So we upload that file itself. So now it's going to create the development steps that were taken with all the curl commands we used. Beautiful. So every single step that Claude initiated is now deployed for me. So as you see, it didn't put my password in here, which I like. It knew not to put the password and my credentials because it's going to host this inside of a public Git repo at the end of this. So it's writing all the information, high availability. I asked it to do a lot. Access control, I rules that it was set up. All right, perfect. It built everything. Now let's create the repo. So create the configuration files for the repository. Oh, look at that. All my config files, all grabbed from bigip.conf, are in here. Owner repo, yada, yada. Health monitors, pool. Beautiful. Everything I need to know. We hit a maximum length of messages. All right. Continue to upload to GitHub. Please. Let's see if it continues. I guess I hit a limit. I'm pushing this a little bit. Adding some JSON. All right, let's go. All right, keep on going, keep on going. All right, let me add a diagram. I didn't even ask it to do a diagram, but sure. Let's set up a diagram for better visualization. I'm going to allow that. Get file contents from my GitHub repo. Sure, allow. Let's add that diagram in there if you want. All right, let's try another approach. Verify the contents of it. This seems to be an issue creating or accessing the repository. Did it figure it out? I guess so. Let's see. I wonder if my token expired, maybe. Did I give this repo name? I don't think I did. So we'll see what it called it. I guess it's going to call it F5 BIGIP HA deployment. Claude hit another max limit. Oh no, I'm putting too much. Just upload it to come on, let's go. Just upload it to the GitHub repo. I think I asked for it. I asked too much for it to do in one shot, in one live demo. But while that's happening, so we got our F5, everything is configured, everything is set up perfectly. The naming convention it used, I didn't even tell it what to do. It picked it. I'm sure I can be more specific with the VIPs. I didn't ask it. It just picked the web VIP. Sure, why not? Let's go. If we take a look at the device groups, created a device group, added both the devices in there. If we take a look at the devices, let's see what it configured. A config sync. It added the failover network. It added the mirroring in here. Amazing. Here's all the config. Why is it? No, it's trying to do a bit too much. I think I have too many things it's trying to push, and it's hitting my Claude limit itself. Look at that. It's still notes for security. Come on. If it doesn't work, I'm going to ask it to do it a little bit less. and we'll see. So it did less. So we hit a limit. So let's just upload the, let's just create the GitHub repo with a document on what is configured, and don't include the curl steps. All right, let's try with a little bit less context, and we could probably add later on in here. All right, so it's going to create that repo now. F5 BIGIP HA config. All right, let's see if it just does a little bit less. I'm sure if I pay for it, I'll get more, but all right, so what's it building? All right, it's giving me the information, virtual servers, the little visual diagram, which is nice on how it's configured. Look at that, beautiful. Oh, perfect. So I just had too much data in there. All right, so perfect. We were able to hit it, so I can hit my GitHub repo. Let's open that up. You can access this repo. Perfect. All right, this is great. Did I actually create the repo? I don't think so. What did it call it? F5 BIGIP? No, it did not. So it caused some internet issues. So let's try again. The repo, the GitHub repo was not created. Can you try again? All right, we're going to try one more time. So it's going to check if it was recreated. And it seems that there was an issue creating the repository. Let's try a different approach. Let's change the name. Sure, maybe I'm already using it somewhere. Still encountering issues. It could be my API curl key. All right, so it's probably my API curry. That's fine. Let's take a look at the actual markdown that it was able to create. So it is able to create this copy of the markdown for my configuration. So let's copy this. I'm just going to start a new chat. And we'll see if my Git tool, I have it here, it's configured. We can set a new API key pretty easily. And then we'll finish this off with that. But it's pretty cool that I was able to just ask it to build whatever I want. Let me give my token all the permissions I need. I wonder if I restart Claude. Oops, did I put it in there? Save and restart Claude. And I wonder if it will be able to go back to that conversation. All right, I think I fixed my Git API key. Can you create this repo again in GitHub? Sebi Corp. All right, let's try again. All right, allow for me to create this documentation on this setup. Perfect. So now the repo has been created. So it was just an API key. Let's see, boom, there it is. And we go to my repo, it just got created right now. So it looks like nothing's in here because I started a new chat. So can you curl into, oh, it's doing its thing here. Oh no, it already has it. I don't need to do anything. Perfect. It's going to add the configuration folder and files into the Git repo, which is awesome. Perfect. It's going to create the files that it needs to. All right, let's see, uploads. All right, if I show you my GitHub repo while it's doing this, let me refresh it. So it added the configs that we configured, added the layout, added a configuration diagram, the iRule that was created, the pool members and the VIPs, actually verifies HA functionality, maintenance and consideration notes. Perfect. And that's it. That was done. So with a couple prompts, I guess, we were able to deploy an F5 and HA and then upload all the documentation to GitHub. Awesome. Thank you very much, man.